let's start with the name that I think caught the most heat yesterday, and that's Matt Grzelcyk. I don't personally understand the hate on this one. What were your thoughts on the Grzelcyk signing?
I don't totally hate it either. I get where people are coming from. He was scratched for the last 11 of their last 12, the Bruins.
Mm-hmm.
The numbers didn't match up with what they're used to, with what the Bruins are used to when it comes to Matt Grzelcyk, but also it's not like he was a minus player. He's never been a minus player in his career. So there's some sort of puck-moving ability that he has that the Penguins are going to look to take advantage of him. I think that was the main reason why they got him. He's not going to be your first-line guy. He's not going to be, unless it comes down to it, because he's on the left side. But he's going to be a solid puck mover for a team that could use a bit of transition out of their own zone at times. We'll see how the defensive game plays out, but also much in the way that we discussed Ryan Graves last year. This is a good signing. This is going to be good for the team. It's a bit long, but so be it. Then it turned out to be a bit of a disaster. You have to look at this. It's looking like a disaster now. It can flip the other way, too. You never know what's going to happen on a player entering a new system, entering a new season even. I get that on the surface it looks scary, but you got to do your best to withhold judgment until you see something on the ice. Or at least, not overreact until you see something on the ice.
I'm glad you mentioned new system in there, because when you look at when Matt Grzelcyk really started to fall off, it coincides directly with a coaching change, right? They went from Bruce Cassidy to Jim Montgomery, and Grzelcyk's numbers started taking hit. Not only mentioning the fact that, he dealt with injury last year as well early in the season, and that can affect, your play throughout a year. You look at Chris Letang, he was injured early in the season, and his play slowly deteriorated through the season. But I think the big thing that I look at with Grzelcyk, yeah, he's had a couple of down seasons, and whether it be because of injury or coaching change, that is for the performance that he put out on the ice. And I think that's the reason he got a 1-year deal, right? 2.75 is a decent chunk of change, but also look at the fact that the Penguins didn't have very much to spend. They needed a top 4 capable guy, and they're already spending a lot of money on Ryan Graves, on Chris Letang, on Erik Karlsson, on Marcus Pettersson for next season. They needed somebody that could play bonus up in the lineup, top minutes, somebody that's handled that before, somebody that's played with a defenseman similar to Chris Letang, and he has with Charlie McAvoy. And I think Grzelcyk checks a lot of those boxes. Is he the most flashy signing? No. Would I have rather seen Jacob Chychrun? If the salary cap wasn't anything, if trading assets wasn't anything you had to take into consideration. I know that Washington got him for a steal, but again, would I have liked to see a guy like Jacob Chychrun? Yeah, I would have preferred that. But at the end of the day, with what they could do, with what they were handcuffed in because of what they're already spending, I don't hate the Matt Grzelcyk signing. And I also think that there's been a lot of revisionist history about P.O. Joseph's season after this signing. But I'll let you respond before I get into that.
No, you also mentioned new system. Let's not forget that Matt Grzelcyk spent 3 years of his college career being coached by David Quinn, who is now in the Penguins, behind the Penguins bench as the defensive coach. So David Quinn's going to be tasked with revamping the career for the final years, for at least the latter years of Erik Karlsson, bringing Chris Letang up another step this upcoming season, and now maybe even a quick reclamation project on Matt Grzelcyk, a guy he is familiar with and had relative success with. I'd have to look into the deeper details. Relative success with at Boston University. So keep that in mind too, that there's that connection there, and that could be a net positive for the Penguins.
Now, the big thing before we move over and talk a little bit about Anthony Beauvillier, a lot of people are saying, well, I would have just rather brought back P.O. Joseph and put him into that position because, P.O. Joseph is still young. He has some untapped potential. Sure. But at the same time, I think there's a lot of people that are saying, you saw what he did at the end of the season. It wasn't that great, guys. Like it was better. It was better than Ryan Graves, which is why I think a lot of people have rose-colored glasses on it. But we're so far removed from actually seeing those games and seeing the play on the ice that a lot of people are forgetting that P.O. Joseph wasn't the next best thing at the end of the season, right? He wasn't a guy that is undeniable to bring back. And at the end of the day, if you're bringing somebody back and you're trying to keep things open going into the future, especially on a left side where there are a lot of question marks. Marcus Pettersson, we'll get into that later this summer. Owen Pickering, how far does he develop? There's a lot of question marks on that left side. Do you really want to eat up more years with a guy that at his best is nowhere near what Grzelcyk was at his best? So if you can get Grzelcyk to his best, he's an analytical darling. He's a guy that played top pair minutes with Charlie McAvoy in some of their best seasons together. I think that if you can get that out of Grzelcyk, there's not even a question that it's better than bringing back P.O. Joseph.
Because let's not forget about this with P.O. Joseph. He was healthy scratched for a good chunk of the season to start, and he wasn't put into that first line position because he was good. The Penguins didn't have a choice.
No, it was out of the press box and onto the top line for him.
Yep. They didn't have a choice. It was, all right, here we go. Let's give it a go. And it happened to be okay. It happened to be fine. Good.
Yeah, it worked out.
That's great. That doesn't mean it's going to again. Also, is P.O. Joseph a lock if they bring it back? Is he, or even without Matt Grzelcyk, was he a lock to hold that position again? Not necessarily. Again, it wasn't because he worked his way there. It was because the team didn't have a choice.
Yeah. So again, the door is not shut on Pierre-Olivier Joseph. Kyle Dubas mentioned that, but if you're bringing him back, the best thing that I can say about that is there's going to be competition. Whereas without that, I don't know if Ryan Shea's really pushing one of those three guys for a spot in the lineup every day. It's just Shea's a little bit of a injury help, because you saw what he was able to do with Jack St. Ivany down the stretch, and that was good as well. But, Grzelcyk, I saw a lot of people saying, a lot of doomsday after the Grzelcyk signing. And I was like, listen, he wasn't good the last two seasons, but let's not act like he hasn't been good. And let's not act like that was 8 years ago. It was 2 seasons ago. Who knows? A new system, a new coach. Mike Sullivan might bring a little bit more than Jim Montgomery did specifically for Matt Grzelcyk. So again, we'll have to wait and see what's up with that. Let's move over and talk a little bit about Anthony Beauvillier, because it was a similar reaction to Beauvillier, somebody that we put at number 2 on the top free agents to watch for the Penguins. And that was simply because he was going to be cheap, and it feels like he just fits with the Penguins. A couple days later, Beauvillier is a member of the Pittsburgh Penguins. What are your thoughts on this one?
We said Anthony Beauvillier sounds like he'd be a good fit in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh went out and signed him, and everyone freaked out.
Yeah.
Except for us, because you can't go. Listen, much like Grzelcyk, 1-year deal. All right, good start. Getting him for a season. If you want to trade him because he's not good later for nothing, do it. Who cares? You're moving on. At the point that the Penguins are at, it is bringing in guys for a season, 2 seasons maybe. Moving on afterwards. If you can bring Anthony Beauvillier in for a good season and he does some good work, he helps out the bottom 6, refines the game that made him solid in New York, then you're cooking. It's a low risk signing, guys. I get that. I get with, you see the analytical numbers of recent with Grzelcyk, Beauvillier, these guys, but I'll tell you what, who cares? It's a season. They're gonna enter a new system. You can't overreact this early, and I think it's just a good choice. It's a low risk option. He's going to come in and help the bottom 6 the best way he can. It's hard to judge the bottom 6 at this point of the summer too.
Little aside here.
Yeah.
I enjoy the analytic side of hockey, right? Yep. I'm somebody that has embraced it. I've tried to learn as much as I can about it. And to be frank, I'm still not as in the weeds as I'd like to be. I want to continue to learn. But the amount of people that just take, and I love Jay Fresh, friend of the show, the amount of people that just take the Jay Fresh hockey card, see red, and take that as gospel and just post that and say, ugh. How about we realize that these are more than just numbers on a paper? These are humans. Yep. When you look at last season, it was bad for Anthony Beauvillier. That much you could sell on the ice and on the spreadsheet. But let's not forget there's a human element of this. The guy was traded twice in the middle of a season. He's played on 4 teams in the last 2 years. And I'm not saying that he's going to come to Pittsburgh and he's going to be, some great piece to the bottom 6. What I'm saying is, let's not bury the guy, a guy who has had previous success in the NHL and more specifically in the Metropolitan Division before he even steps foot on Pittsburgh ice. Not only that, he's had success in the Metro Division. He has shown that he has offensive upside. And he's a bottom 6 addition. And that's the thing that I don't understand with the hate on the Hayes deal, the hate on the Beauvillier deal is you look at those two, you look at Jesse Puljujärvi, you look at Emil Bemstrom, which is why I haven't screamed and raved and ranted about him coming back. They will all be bumped for the prospects that are in the system if those prospects prove to be ready. As of right now, these are placeholders. That's why it's 1 year for Beauvillier. That's why it's 1 year for Bemstrom. That's why, Hayes has 2 years left, but at the same time, you could move on from that as the St. Louis Blues did. That's why Puljujärvi has 1 year left on his contract. Because if these young guys are better, then put them on waivers. Send them to the minors. It's not going to hurt you that much. So that's why I don't mind this move. I understand that people say, well, he had a bad season last year, but also this is a bottom 6 piece for a team that is not going to a Stanley Cup. You have to realize that it's not going to be that enticing for top free agents to come to Pittsburgh. Not to mention, Kyle Dubas mentioned it on Friday in Vegas, saying basically, don't expect anything flashy in free agency. Beauvillier fits right into that mold. Nothing flashy, doesn't move the needle much, but it is an expected move that at the end of the day fills out the roster with somebody that at his best could be a difference maker, could be an impact player for the Penguins this season.